G'day again. It's your old mate, the bloody Aussie battler again, and I've got Barry McInerney in the studio. Um, Barry, you're down in Victoria, I'm up here in Queensland, so we're not exactly in the same studio, but it looks like you're in a courthouse.
Well,
Where
yes,
is that?
it's a courthouse. It's next to the police station in Mornington, in Victoria, and people can rent this place out to practice law. A lot of kids go there and they have little acts of law, which mean the whole thing is an act anyway. So I won't go into that at the moment. So it's available for people to rent, and I just took this photograph in there and I thought, what a lovely little place. It's kind of a tourist attraction, and it's if you ever wanted to rent it, you can do it.
Jolly good. All right, mate. Well, it might make a very good venue for convening a grand jury, which brings me to the point. A lot of people are asking, well, what's going on with this darn grand jury that I keep on talking about? And the simple fact is, we can't just rush into a grand jury. It takes time. It may take 1 or 2 years before we can actually convene one. And one of the reasons I can't do anything at the moment is because we don't have enough groundswell support. Now, that means that people out there who are listening to this show, if you haven't already downloaded and signed a My Will letter, please do it. And if you have, download it and print out as many as you can and get other people to do it. And don't just hang on to it after you've signed it. That's useless. Send it to the address on our website. That's mywillaustralia.com. And the address is on the website, on the front page, and almost many other pages. It's down in South Australia. We were going to talk today about the difference between common law and admiralty law. Now, I want to make a very quick point before I ask you to get into this. The difference between admiralty law is that in admiralty law, which is also the law of France, you are guilty until you prove yourself innocent. Whereas under the Westminster system of common law, you are innocent until proven guilty. And that's the big difference. Would you agree, Barry?
Yes, 100%. You enter into a court today or tomorrow, and the fact that you've actually turned up, you're saying you're guilty, unless you got one of their stooges with you. That's a barrister or a solicitor, which is, you see, as Brian Shaw said, Hollywood is full of actors. So you bring a barrister to court or a solicitor, they're going to act for you, which means they're obviously actors, and you're part of an act, which they rely on. But this maritime law goes back to Henry the Protagonist, way back in the 12th century, where he married Queen Eleanora of Aquitaine, and of course France was a maritime city. It's entrenched law, and it's like religion. You see, I remember when I was training in the police force way back, they said these are old laws and they're a bit silly, something going back to 1886 and something like that, 1889, when the Bill of Rights was entrenched. And they say, we've new laws now. I mean, and it made sense to us. We actually believe that, yes, going way back to the 12th century is a bit ridiculous, so we'll go along with these new laws, and they're all acts, and they're nothing more than fiction.
That's right. I just wanted to clarify, when you talk about King Henry, which one was that? First, second, third, fourth? Quite a few, weren't there?
Yeah. Well, King Henry, the Protagonist, he was the father of, the best one probably is, what do you call him? Richard the Lionheart. Richard the Lionheart went off fighting battles, and he got killed in the Holy Land fighting. So he had 8 brothers and sisters. There was 8 in the family. A couple of them died young. The second one died by a horse trampling. And King John was the runt of the litter, and he actually ended up being king. And he was a terrible king of England. He caused an enormous amount of problems. That's the time of Robin Hood and the Sheriff of Nottingham times. So he was a very weak man and caused a lot of problems in Britain at that time.
That's right. Okay, so let's get back to admiralty law. That's what we are being ruled under these days in Australia. And yet, when I grew up, I always thought we had the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution law and common law, which is the same thing. The Constitution is based on English common law. What happened?
Well, what happened was after about 23 years, I think, the silly people of Australia voted for Gough Whitlam. And of course, they were all old men when they came in there. They were a pretty rusty lot. And Gough Whitlam got really smart and borrowed money. But what he did do was to get rid of the Queen. Now, the
That's
last
right.
lawful Governor General was decided that wasn't going to happen. So I think him and the Queen had a very serious conversation, either verbally or in writing, and removed the government. So Gough Whitlam got chucked out, and of course Malcolm Fraser came in, which is not much better than that. And then when Bob Hawke got in, now he was the last prime minister to take a lawful oath to Queen Elizabeth II, her airs and graces, and he did that knowing. Well, I can't say what he knew at the time, but I dare say he had it planned. Then he came along and created the Act of 1986 on total law, or unlawful information. He hoodwinked the Queen, the British Parliament, on the fact that the 40th all 40 referendums failed, but he convinced the British Parliament that we all said, yes, we want to be a republic, and they signed off on it. So it went on from there. So that's why we now are a not lawful republic. We're just a dream.
Yes, exactly. Actually, what happened was, I believe, he got the Queen to come out hoping that she would just sign off on the Act, the Australia Act, and she read through it and she said, yeah, okay, if this is what the Australian people want. She initialed the front, but she never signed the Act into law. She said to Bob, before I can sign this, you have to hold a referendum, and he never did. So every law, every act, every bylaw that they have passed since then, this is the big problem that these people face now. People like you and me, mate, and we're finding out that this system has no authority. When I talk about no authority, they cannot prove they have authority going back to the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act 1900.
There's no invested power. So you have to have power invested. So when the Queen was removed, and this is really annoying, you'll see these barristers walking around the streets in Melbourne and Queensland and dare say everywhere else, and they've got this little thing that looks like a rose on their back, and they're called Queen's Counsellors. Now, they haven't taken an oath to the Queen, Queen Elizabeth II. There's a Bodgy Queen. We mustn't forget the Bodgy Queen. But they haven't taken an oath to our lawful leader, if you like, the Queen, Queen Elizabeth II, and they call themselves Queen's Counsellors. And we have these royal commissions without a queen. So everybody who goes after these, promotes these commissions, they're committing fraud, treason, unconscionable conduct, abuse of office. Because even our friend ScoMo, they call him now, isn't the Prime Minister? He knows that there's no queen, but yet they carry on as there is, and they're still hoodwinking the people. But it will, and it is coming to the end. Now, the reason they're getting away with it, people haven't charged them, but I know for a fact there's a few people looking up the Queen's Bench in England and going to start, which we can do through Australia, start laying charges against these people and bring them to account. And of course, international law is something else that there's a few people working on, which I think I support, that we bring charges to them under the unilateral or into international law, and they have to be charged. And until that happens, they will carry on laughing at us and think they're smug, but they know they're on shaky ground, because when all criminals know it all comes to an end, and quite abruptly in most cases.
If an order by the court, for instance, is given, and there is no authority that they can prove back to the Constitution, it's called coram non judice. Coram non judice, C-O-R-M non-judice, which is J-U-D-I-C-E. Therefore, it is absolutely invalid. Now, when the police, you probably know, the police came around to my house last week and took my computer and my hard drives and a few other things away on a court order. And while they were here, I asked them, who did you swear your oath of allegiance to when you became police? And the AFP chap who was in charge of the troop of cops that came into my home piped up, oh, I swore my oath of allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth of England. I said, oh yeah, what year was that? Was it after 1972? He said, I wasn't even born then. And I said, well, in that case, you swore an oath of allegiance to the Queen of Australia. Who is she? And he looked at me, and all the other cops looked at me like, oh, Lord, what's that all about? They didn't know. So, you know, what we have to do now, Barry, is try and educate people about the real situation concerning our law. And you and I are part of that education process. So, you know, funnily enough, while the police were here, I gave that AFP chappie a copy of Dick Yardley's book. And I explained briefly what it was all about. And while we were out in the kitchen and we were just finishing up, the guy in charge of collecting the evidence said, "Oh, do you want to put that book into evidence?" And the AFP bloke clasped it to his chest and said, "No, I want to read this." So on the plane home, I hope and think he probably got a bit of a shock. And I haven't heard back from him, even though I've emailed him a couple of times.
Yeah.
But when I did email him, I've asked him some very pertinent questions.
Yeah.
So I'm just waiting for them to get back to me. And I have a funny feeling right now he's been sitting there contemplating his navel, wondering what the heck he's going to do. Because once they realise they are sitting in treason, which is really what they're doing, now that they know that the Queen is no longer part of the Constitution, what are they going to do? They only have two choices. They can either resign, or they can do the right thing and get back under the Constitution and swear an oath of allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom, and then work with us. And, you know, we don't want the police gone. We want them on our side, working for we, the people of the Commonwealth of Australia. That's who they're supposed to be working for, correct?
Right. Yes, well, I have here the actually oath of office, which the police swear. I swear by Almighty God that I will well and truly serve our sovereign lady, the Queen, as a member of the police force. Well, they think, and a reasonable man would say, yes, that's the Queen Elizabeth II, but they have removed that bit out, because I remember when I took an oath, it was Queen Elizabeth II and her airs and graces. They removed that out. So all these young coppers now are convinced that's who they take. It's perception. So they think they're taking votes to the Queen, but they're not. And
that's correct.
The police force, yeah.
Well, the thing is, you know, when you say the Queen, it's very ambiguous. And when you take an oath like that, you must take an oath to a very specific person. The Queen is ambiguous. Who is it? So it must be, I swear an oath to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom and her heirs and successors, and otherwise it's not lawful. Do you have a copy of the actual oath in the Constitution? I don't have it here with me at the moment.
I do actually. I do have several of them, and I've taken oath to the Queen in the Army, and I've taken oath to the Queen in the police. I do know, and I was sworn in by a stipendatory magistrate in the police. Now, the thing is, what you got to realise, you've got young guys who've been told that new laws have been created to replace the old ones, and they're rather silly, and it's not a very hard concept to grasp, because it does sound silly. I mean, parliamentary privilege, that comes under the Bill of Rights, and they still stick by the Bill of Rights when it comes to parliamentary privilege, but as far as everything else is concerned, that doesn't exist. The right to bear arms, which is in that act as well. Oh, that won't be good for the people, so we won't tell them. Yeah,
absolutely.
You see, there's the middle rank cops, the guys who are senior constables and stuff. We used to call them dead wood because they've given up, and they all know, and they're really angry. And those guys, if knowing what's going on, got together, they could go in and do it overnight by arresting the police minister, arresting them, because they're all criminals, and then they don't want to admit that.
No, they don't, because they're worried about their pensions. But what they don't seem to realise is, you know, fear is self-defeating, because if you fear, you will lose everything anyway. These politicians are going to steal everything off us that they can. They've already stolen just about everything in Australia. They've taken our pensions. They've taken all the public utilities. They've sold off our land, sold off our water rights. They're selling off everything they can. And do you really think that police pensions are going to be inviolate? Of course not. The politicians will go after them as well. So if there are any policemen listening to this, please have a look at what's going on, and then ask yourself, is it worth staying with a bunch of criminals who are destroying our country, or are you prepared to swear an oath of allegiance to the correct Queen and stand under the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act 1900 and act on behalf of the people of the Commonwealth of Australia? We need you, because you are the guardians of the law. That doesn't mean say that you're the enforcers of the law. You are supposed to be the guardians of the law. You're supposed to be the peacekeepers. That hasn't happened anymore. Nowadays, the politicians tell you, you are there to enforce the law. Well, enforcement means a dictatorship. You and I both live in a dictatorship. Do we want that? I don't.
No.
Barry?
Well, there is no law. The only law is the law of the land. And I remember being in court one time when the barrister, the judge actually slipped up and says, "That's the law of the land." And of course, the person in the dock didn't realise that was an out, because it was in a maritime what they call it, law. So the law of the land. But the police, you've got to realise there's two police services. We got the command, which are all worried about losing the pensions. You've been in the job for 40 years, 30, 40 years. You don't want to lose your pension. And of course, the other young cops have been in there for 10, 15 years. They've got a job, they've got families too, and it's really hard. It's like religion. It's very hard to change religion. If you told me 10 or 15 years ago about some of the things that's happened, I wouldn't want to believe it. And it's
No, same here. I was in denial for a long time. You know, I had people like Dick Yardley and other people telling me for a couple of years, we have a corporate government. And I thought to myself, how can we have a corporate government? We have a Commonwealth of Australia constitution. But I was confused too, because I was looking at the corporate constitution, not our 1900 constitution. And once the penny clicked, and actually it's on our website, you can go to cirnow.com.au, and there is an article on the front page there. You'll see criminals in government. And there's a great article in there and a video which explains so much about how these politicians have subverted the law for their own uses. And this video explains how Rudd and Goss rewrote or brought in a Reprints Act, which basically gives state governments the right to rewrite laws. Now, yeah.
The Bigelow Corporation, God, that Beattie, he was a crafty sod. He changed.
Boy.
He took everything off you.
He did.
He was bad news. Yeah, he made himself CEO of the Bigelow Corporation, removed the separation of powers, control the courts, the police. He owns everything. So there's no...
And the Anglican Church.
There's definitely no law in Queensland, and the Queen was definitely gone. She's now part of the woodwork of the Bigelow Corporation. No sense, no hope.
Yeah, I know. Mate, but that article there, Criminals in Government, you'll see it on the front page of my website, CIR Now. It's very easy. It's got a picture of Gough Whitlam standing behind a whole bunch of those old crooks that have been prime ministers.
I've seen that one, yeah.
Yeah. And watch that video. It was an hour long. It's a bit of a funny story because your rights and the police, Commonwealth of Australia versus Australia Act, and criminals in government. You've got to read those three. Once you've read those, you've got a pretty good idea of what's going on. Now, Barry, tell us a little bit more about how Admiralty law works.
Well, it works very well for the system to make money, because it is a very large money spinning machine.
Cool,
so,
yeah.
Especially it's rubber stamp justice. It's nothing more. So I remember being in court years ago when I was in the enforcement aspect. Anyway, a guy came in. There was people who didn't pay their fares on the train, and it was $400. And this guy came in and gave the most plausible excuse why he didn't pay his fare. And it was, anybody with a heart would have said, oh God, okay, $400. So it's basically, even if it's like they are a bank. I call them the New State Bank. So at the end of the day, they've got to balance the books in their favor. Otherwise, somebody's got to pay. So if somebody is let off, say, oh, you're okay, these people, innocent again is another fictional word, but they have to pay money into the poor box. There has to be an exchange of money for the judge to be happy. And the whole thing is a fun job. I mean, you've got to challenge them. They've got to be challenged in their own law. This is the thing. Instead of you can't go in there and say, I'm a man. You've got to go in there and do the right thing in their system, use their laws against them. And the whole thing is basically in the grammar, verbs, pronouns, and so on. That wipes them out before, because everything they write is it's fiction.
That's right. And that's why my ebook, Steps to Fight Fines, is very valuable. A lot of people are learning how to fight back. And as I said before, we don't always win in court, but the fact is we are putting the wind up them, and we're making them start to realise that they're acting unlawfully and in treason. Misprision of treason, actually, because we tell them what's going on with the politicians. And once they know that, then if they continue to do what they're doing, that's misprision of treason. So, if we all start fighting back and saying, no, I'm not going to pay this fine unless you can justify it to me, and I'm innocent until proven guilty.
I don't
And
know.
if we all do that,
Yeah,
we've got to start putting them on the back foot.
yeah. I don't know what the system in Queensland here, but some of the boys involved in it in common law went to have a look at the infringement court, and there's a computer on the 12th floor, and the lady in there says they said, how come you're up here? And we want to see the infringement code. And she showed them that's it, it's a big computer. So the whole thing is based on a lie. So people are paying fines that they don't have to, but they pay because they're scared, and it's all
That's
scare
right.
tactics.
Well, that's what I was talking about before. Fear rules us. You lose.
Heaven and
If
earth.
you fight back, you've got a chance to not lose it. It's your money, and they're trying to take it off you without a fair trial.
It's just like,
you are innocent until proven guilty. That's it.
Religion, you go to heaven, you go to hell. So nobody wants to go down there, especially on a hot day. So they pretend to play the rules, and that's basically people. You can't. The sad thing about it is it's very, very hard to tell somebody that they're living in a fiction. The whole thing is fiction. It's like the kids. We tell them about Santa Claus, and then we come and break their hearts later on and tell them there's no Santa Claus. But we've never been told that we're living in a land of fiction.
Yeah, exactly. And I often tell people, a coward dies 1,000 deaths. A brave man only dies once. Just remember that.
That's really true. Us old soldiers have to stand up, and it's funny that I'm first generation Irish, and Jerry is second, and the Irish.
I'm second.
Sorry?
I'm second.
1 second. Okay.
No, I am second generation Irish.
Second generation Ireland, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's funny, the Irish don't have great happiness or a love for the Queen, but I do actually. I think she's a fantastic lady, and she's been treated rubbishly by Australia, by these politicians here in Australia. The people don't know. This is the sad thing. The people don't know that the Queen has been removed. They don't know the Republic since 1986. It's just it's soul destroying.
Well, I went down to the panel beater this morning. I mentioned in passing to him, and he said, "I didn't know that." I said, "Well, here's my card. Go and have a look at my website." And everywhere I go, I also gave him a copy of my will letter, and I said, "There's a couple more there. Give them out and see if you can get signatures." So everywhere I go, I'm always talking to people, and the shock when they realise what I'm saying. But that soon turns into a thirst for knowledge. And as soon as people start learning, it opens their eyes, and that's the end of that. These people in Parliament have lost another believer and another voter.
It's great to see. I was talking to a young guy. He's a registered nurse, Divi 1, and he's in charge of a small nursing home. And I just got talking to him like you do with other people. And I said, "Do you think there's something wrong with the system?" "Oh my God," he says, "there is." And I said, "Would you like to find out?" He would. So a lot of the younger people now are willing. They know this. Everybody knows. I said, we spend the first 20 years of our life going to school, sex, and then you pay the next 20, 30 years of your life paying for that mistake, if you've made a mistake. And when you're in your 50s, you realize you've been hoodwinked for so long, there must be something wrong. And we, the lucky people, know what it is. We just got to help the others to find out where they've been hoodwinked and how to get them back on track.
Exactly. Mate, I think we've just about run out of time here, but I would love to have you back again, because I know you have an awful lot of knowledge, especially since you work with Brian Shaw a lot. And he's a real eye-opener, isn't he?
Oh, God,
but,
yes. Great,
yeah, but we're all, as I said before, we're all learning off each other, and I'm sure you have a lot of knowledge that I don't, and I have a lot of knowledge you don't. So, this exchange of ideas is very good. You've got a website, haven't you, Barry? We all know the media is not our friend. So what I'm trying to do here is to build up a network based on my podcast. Now, my podcast, I just give you a little piece of code, and you stick that into a page on your website, and it pulls all of our podcasts into your website.
Yes.
So you can have all the 2019 podcasts, you can have all the 2020 podcasts, and so on and so forth. And that will help get the word out to people all over Australia. And if you know anybody else with a website who'd like to do the same thing, let's get the word out there. The further these podcasts go, the more people we're reaching.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's good. That's a fantastic idea. And yes, I'll have a serious look at that. I did see that with Daryl. I know Daryl quite well. And obviously, Daryl, you've got to look up because he's so tall.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah,
Well, he needs to be told to stuff all that information inside him. He's got. God, he's marvelous, isn't he?
oh, look, he's one of the most knowledgeable people with Brian Shaw. And if we could, the thing is, they don't talk to each other to a certain degree, and because they've all got little differences and opinions. If they could,
Mm.
them three people, I'm talking about a couple of others as well, sat down together, and we all add in 10% of what we know. My God, it'd be a hell of a pot of information.
Well, hopefully we'll get all of these people together when we start convening the grand jury. Now, I've been asked how many people are going to sit on the grand jury. Now, we need a minimum of 12 or 15. I'm not sure. Do you know? Do you know what that is?
Yeah, I was privileged to sit in a grand jury in Los Angeles because I wasn't from the country, and I went over there years ago. They let me sit in and watch it, and we need 23 people here. And Brian Shaw has conducted quite a number of grand juries. One in Bendigo, where there was about 50 people in the audience, and Brian discussed the law with them, and the people put their hand up and says, yes, there is a case to answer, and they all signed the paperwork for the grand jury and created an indictment, right? And then that goes then before a real court afterwards. If we could find a real court, it'd be good. But the language used, the paperwork used in there isn't, grammar-wise, it lets itself down. That's where we've got to improve on the grammar.
In where?
Well, if you write anything that starts with a vowel issue, you're pretty good in grammar. You give me an interesting few pages, but you've got to be careful how it's written. It's got to have adverb, verb, and so on.
Oh yeah. Well, I used to teach business writing, so I think I'm a pretty good writer. But
yeah, you're pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've got to be careful how you even say it. It's important as well, because we have to, anything that starts with a vowel, and the whole thing is written in it's actually the first line. You can just throw the whole thing out as fiction. And we have to learn like that it's not thrown out by them, because they know and they see it.
Right. Well, okay, mate. Look, we could go on, and I'd love to, but I think we'd better cut it out here. We've been going on for quite a while here. So thank you very much for coming on, and I'm sure we'll see you back here again soon. And maybe you'll find another very interesting place to be sitting the next time we talk. And me too, with any luck.
Okay, fantastic talking to you, Mike. I hope you have a nice day up here. I'm getting pretty hot in here, although the air conditioner is on. It's down low, so just blow the coat away. Anyway, thanks for having me on, and take care.
In my tropical shirt here, mate. It's too hot to be getting all dressed up. Anyway, thank you very much, and see you again, mate. Bye now.
Cheers, Mike. Bye.